Bransfield. Oh, for God's sake, I've just done that snappy turnaround video on Half-Life turning 25. What do you mean another of Bransfield's all-time, top-ranked, best-ever games hit a huge age stone of its own just a few weeks later? Yes, kids, Doom is 30 as of December 10th, 2023. What the actual F? I ask what the actual because A, time, what a bastard, and 2, what do you mean it was only 5 years between Doom and the original Half-Life? Crikey. So, Doom. I've talked about Doom quite a lot here on my channel over the years, and that's because, would you believe it, it had a massive impact on me and has stuck in my brain ever since. I've mentioned I first played it on my mate's dad's PC. He was an accountant, so I had it for proper work stuff, but also Doom was on there because, of course it was. So yeah, one of my defining, most repeated memories of this particular friend was him sitting behind me in assembly when we were 10 years old, making the grunt noises of Doom's zombie troops. But making it sound like they were saying, Ian, Ian. This is how burned into my psyche Doom was, and is. And I know I was exactly 10 when that happened because Doom came out when I was 10 and I moved from junior to comprehensive school in September 1994, not long after turning 11 in the summer when I wasn't at school. Just wanted to point that out because usually I forget everything and it's nice to be able to remember something, and no, you're right. Doom! I could do another video restating my love for the game, for the series, apart from Doom 3. But we've gone over that, and I've said a lot of what I wanted to say, mainly in the PS1 Doom video. As such, I decided to bundle together my previous Doom videos and throw out one of those ever-popular compilations, just with a wee bit of commentary for each. The house rule is I'm going to stop short of including every single time I've had a section or subsection of a video talk about Doom, because that would just be silly. I'd talk about it way too much. This is videos based on or around Doom. First up, it's a brief one, and actually something I did as a sort of promotional effort to tie in with that FPS documentary I posted a couple of trailers for. I think you lot signing up for that Indiegogo campaign via my referral link bagged me about 30 quid, which was honestly a lot more than I expected. I'm not big on sponsored content, really. Still, this was a video that quickly went through Doom, why I love it, and why it's brilliant. It was part of a series of 7 videos all titled The Best First-Person Shooter Ever Made, hence the unwavering statement about it being, well, the best FPS. Here we go. Bransfield. Here we go, a series of short videos covering the best first-person shooters ever made, according to me. This isn't an official list, this isn't voted on, this isn't based on Metacritic or any critic apart from this critic, me, who likes these games. Today's game is the best first-person shooter ever made, Doom. Life can be split into 2 distinct periods, before Doom, BD, and after Doom, AD. In the BD period, we saw first-person shooters both nascent and recognisable, with a genre slowly forming itself into something more than competent. Then Doom happened, and everything that came before was summarily rendered irrelevant. In the AD, we saw countless, hundreds, thousands, potentially billions of other games trying to be what Doom was, and the vast majority of them failing to come anywhere close. Its masterpiece was lightning in a bottle, the sort of thing you just don't get by looking to other things for inspiration or by trying to rip off the previous greats. No, Doom was a game that came about thanks to 2 things. Practice, because this was not its first first-person shooter, and the freedom that comes with just dicking about. Now, Doom was made by serious coders and designers, and the game itself was a proper product, eventually packaged up and sold to the general public. It wasn't a Mickey Mouse outfit, but there can be little doubt that Carmack, Romero and co were mucking about to see what fit, having fun with both the creative process and the bleeding-edge tech they themselves were cooking up as they went along. That sort of design ethos, that palpable feeling that the creator was having fun while making the thing you're now having fun with, it just doesn't happen. It's once in a generation stuff, maybe once in a lifetime, maybe once, full stop. Doom is the greatest FPS ever made. I have to say, that's my favourite video about Doom I've ever made. Second up, it's me just talking about Doom on PS1, why it's great, why I love it, and why I rate it above the other versions of the game even though it's technically inferior. Nostalgia is the answer to that particular riddle, by the way. Plain old nostalgia. I am absolutely blind to the legitimate criticisms aimed at the PS1 version of Doom because it was my version of one of my favourite games. I mean, it's legit great, but I don't disagree my blinkers are on a bit. Anyway, let's go. Bransfield! I've mentioned Doom a lot in previous videos. I've done videos about the game, and I've specifically played the PlayStation version of Doom for a bunch of different bits and pieces over the years. There's plenty of footage on my hard drives, basically. I've nattered on about Doom, specifically on PS1, a lot, and I've wanted to put together a video on it for a long time. But when something's that big, when it's a game that genuinely means that much to you, where do you even start? What do you focus on? Where do you go with the narrative arc in your script? How do you do a game as personally important as Doom on PlayStation justice in a silly little video? It's been overwhelming. And it means I've put off doing any specific video on the game for a long time, like actual years. But then, in the middle of 2022, I had an idea. I'd go through them all. Every version of Doom on the PlayStation, and there's more than you might think. And I'd go into the details on them, their backgrounds, what they did well, what they failed at, their impact on the wider world, and it got away from me again. It suddenly became too big. Too ambitious a project for my addled mind to accept, to get to work on. So I pared it back. I eliminated the plan from my mind and instead I just sat down and started writing this script as a stream of conscious sort of thing, tapping the words as they came to me and not letting mere things like planning and having a cogent idea get in the way of just putting something out there. Something that says definitively and in a focused-ish manner that I genuinely love Doom on PlayStation. I adore it. It changed my life. It's one of the best games ever made, and I honestly prefer it to the technically more adept PC version. The original PlayStation console released towards the end of 1995 in the US and Europe, and shortly afterwards yet another port of Doom landed on the machine. The game had come to PC first in 1993, then had been ported to Mac, Sega's 32X, the Japan-only PC 98, and Atari's Jaguar in 1994, and shortly before its PS1 release the game had been rather improbably ported to the SNES. That is to say, it wasn't a new concept for Doom to be ported to things. Just like these days it's not a new concept for people to get the game to a playable state in the reflection of a puddle or on the surface of the moon, or for Doom to be powered by potatoes. One of those is genuine, by the way. So Doom arriving on console was something celebrated, an amazing game coming to a wider audience, always fantastic. But it wasn't necessarily expected to be much beyond what we'd seen before. It was based on the Jaguar port, which had been fine. It wouldn't be coded by id Software itself, which was worrying. And it was replacing the original incredible music with a brand new score, which was heresy. Technologically, the PS1 wasn't a patch on PCs of the day, so of course Doom wouldn't run as quickly or smoothly as the original, and yeah, it all just came together in a bundle of reduced expectations. I think it's fair to say that. There was excitement, sure. High expectations? Not so much. Just another pared back port. And objectively speaking, Doom on PS1 was a pared back port. It didn't run as quickly and as smoothly as the original. Multiplayer was limited to 2 players and you needed 2 PS1s, a link cable, 2 TVs, and actually only 1 copy of the game if you used the swap trick like I used to, because the game loaded the entire level into RAM so it didn't need the disc once it had shunted the map into the console, meaning you could get by with just 1 copy of the game. Where was I? Yeah, so on paper it wasn't as technically accomplished, it wasn't as good as the PC version. But Doom on PS1 was an incredibly intelligent port. It leaned into its limitations and utilised its additions to shift things, to change the game from one thing to another. The PC original was a quick-paced run-and-gun first-person shooter, verging on hyperactive at times and, while fairly atmospheric, not something you'd shit yourself raw at while playing. The PS1 port suffered from a bit of slowdown, its frame rate not being as high or consistent as on PC. As a result, it became a slightly more plodding, slower affair. There was also that new musical score alongside new sound effects and the like. So it was this slightly slower game, combined with music that shunted the feeling of the original from blazing fast MIDI metal to, well, a mood, fear, distress, a gosh darn baby crying, the howling of demons, warped God knows what. This combination of speed and audio made PS1 Doom into something eerie and unsettling. It changed the entire pitch of the game, moving it from a frantic shooter to pretty much an outright horror game. And it was brilliant for it. Levels were darker, some technical limitation or something, and there was plentiful use of coloured lighting to add to the ambience. The PS1's RAM couldn't handle too many enemies at one time, so rather than getting a bunch of cyber demons thrown your way, you get one every now and then, making these encounters with bigger enemies rare and all the more terrifying for it. Even something as basic as transparencies came into play. The original wibbly-wobbly, easily seen, invisible pig demons were replaced by often genuinely hard to see invisipigs, meaning these sods could actually sneak up on you or surprise you if you weren't entirely focused on looking for their predator-like shimmer. All of it, cutbacks and the odd improvement, coalesced into the finished, wonderful port. I honestly struggle to think of a port or a sequel or a revision of a single game that has so successfully, so smartly shifted the entire vibe of the game through just a few changes, and mainly through the music. I loved Doom on PC. I fondly remember playing it on my mate's dad's computer. He was the only person I knew at the time with a PC because his pop was an accountant or something. We loved playing it. We'd sit in assembly at junior school making the noises from the game at each other. He'd say my name as though he was a zombie troop and teachers had no bloody clue what we were doing. Genuinely, I still remember him sitting there going, Ian, Ian. It was a delightful obsession. I was desperate for my own Doom though, and it was that 1995 port that brought the magic home to me. And home to me in a way I never expected it. Doom on PS1 isn't the original game. It isn't the best port, having been bettered by the perfect ports in later years. On paper, it suffered a lot of cutbacks. I didn't even mention there was no nightmare difficulty or arch-vile enemy type, or that plenty of levels were completely excised owing to technical worries. But it ended up so much more than the sum of its parts, a port almost entirely perfectly tweaked to fit the target format, and seriously, Jesus crikey, home to one of the best tonal pivots I've ever seen. Yes, I keep rattling on about it, but there's a good reason I sat down to grab some footage of PS1 Doom for this video, and literally ended up playing the whole game from start to finish over a couple of weeks. It's incredible. It's one of the best ports of Doom, one of my favourite games ever made, and I just really bloody love it a lot, so I had to do some kind of video on it before the world sets alight and our sky looks like that animated fire one they introduced in this version of the game. Just complete and total bliss. And happily, it wasn't all of the Doom on Sony's first console. So I mentioned there are more versions of Doom on PlayStation than you might know of, so it is fair to go back to that for a second. Always shitty to be left hanging after all. See, the original game got itself a follow-up a year after it released in the arse end of 1996. Final Doom wasn't a sequel, more a mission pack. It brought levels from, well, Doom mission packs on the PC. And while there was a modified engine behind it all, it didn't change much else. You could use the mouse, different skyboxes. I think the Super Shotgun sprite was redrawn between the US and European versions. I don't know, it's irrelevant crap like that you'll find endlessly discussed on Doom World and its ilk. Important thing was, I didn't care about Final Doom. I still don't, and I still feel it was a cheap and cheerful and not wholly unwelcome addition to the Doom on PlayStation pantheon. It just felt like a facsimile of the original. No, not that. It felt like a bit of a cash grab, hastily thrown together where the original PS1 Doom felt like a bit of a labour of love. So Final Doom never triggered anything particularly positive in me. And yeah, playing it for some footage here, I wasn't drawn in like I was with OG Doom to finish the entire thing. It was fine. Absolutely fine. But then we pivot to the ones you actually might not expect, given Final Doom was a full and official PS1 release. First, a Russian hacked version named Doom Forever. This is nothing more than a novelty, to be honest. It was pressed on disc and packaged to be sold around Russia, albeit in an unofficial fashion, and the game itself is, well, it's bad. Real bad. But hey, I can just let you stare at it a bit instead of wasting time elaborating on why, can't I? Yeah? Okay. And then we have something I absolutely love, wholeheartedly and without a single smudge of irony on show. PlayStation Doom Master Edition. I found this hack of PS1 Doom when I had the brain thought of, I wonder if anyone's put the missing levels from OG Doom into PlayStation Doom. I genuinely had this thought 1 week before the 4th beta of Master Edition release, which followed a 3-year wait, so good timing on my brain's part for once. So what is it? Well, it's an attempt by a dedicated group of heroes to bring all the missing levels from Doom and its various mission packs, mods and monsters to the PlayStation, in the original PS1 style, in both the original and Final Doom PS1 engines, and with a lot of the original PS1 foibles. It's fan-made, it's still in its beta, and it has issues, but it's already absolutely fantastic and finally makes Doom complete on the PlayStation. You've the Doom and Doom 2 levels missing from the PS1 port, the Icon of Sin and Arch Vials are restored, analog controller support is added in, secret enemies like the Wolfenstein SS officers are introduced, loads of other stuff I can't remember is thrown in there, and you get the expansion pack levels not included in Final Doom or anywhere previously on PS1, from Master Levels, TNT Evolution, the Plutonia Experiment, No Rest for the Living, and even John Romero's fairly recent release, Sigil. That last bit gave me an actual pang of glee when I saw it pop up on the title screen. A pang, I say. And it works. It does. There are problems with slowdown and the odd glitch here and there, things to be ironed out, I'm sure, but it brings the whole effing Doom to PlayStation, and it means there is finally everything official, in air quotes, from Doom here on the little grey box that for some reason is still in my living room in 2022, soon to be 2023. Which is the 30th anniversary of the original Doom's release on PC. Well, shit. I can honestly say I'll still be playing Doom in 30 years, unless I die in some kind of carpentry-related incident, and I'll be doing everything in my power to make sure it's the PlayStation version. Doom is one of the most important games ever made when it comes to video games as a whole. Doom on PlayStation is one of the most important games ever made when it comes to me as a whole. I bloody love Doom. So thanks for listening to me waffle about Doom. I don't know about you, but that really has to be my favourite video about Doom I've ever made. Next, Third, a review I did for Doom Eternal on the magazine I worked on for a few years. Originally I intended to do a load of these reposts of my written reviews in video form, but Wireframe came under new management and the Creative Commons license for the content changed, so it became murky legal territory I just wasn't comfortable in. Ah well. I'm good at reviews. I did it professionally for a long time, so you'd hope so, but sadly nobody seems to watch them on the YouTubes, at least without a gimmick involving hats or animations or sarcasm or being angry or whatever, which ain't my style. Anyway, video!
Bransfield.
Right, I've landed the first part and I'm now clinging to a wall. Scope the area out, looks like that's my next target. given it's got a bright green light on it, very subtle. I'll need to double jump, then air dash at least once, try to collect the mid-air power-up to recharge my dashes, hit that pole to vault myself a bit further, then dash carefully and quickly to avoid a couple of traps before landing on the platform below. Then back to the regularly scheduled ripping and tearing. Doom Eternal is an odd one. Because yes, Doom's second outing of this, the modern era, brings with it a whole host of platforming sections. You jump, you cling, you dash, you plummet. It's all present and correct. And shockingly, it's all pretty good too, with a crispness of control that echoes the game's return elsewhere to tight, satisfying combat. Adding in platforming to an FPS has been seen as a negative since even before Half-Life polluted the waters with its Zen section in 1998, but that hasn't stopped it, and fair play to them. I find it hard to accept that platforming really fits in a Doom game, but progress makes a fool out of all of us, right? The core of the experience in Doom Eternal does, of course, stick to the tried and tested elements that made 2016's reboot so impactful and brilliant. While those platforming sections do add a bit of change, a bit of depth to what you're doing in your downtime, the main game is still ostensibly a series of monster rooms. They're just bigger this time, you're facing more enemies, they're smarter and more aggressive, but you do have a few more boomsticks and other techniques to take them on with. So while you might see yourself being overwhelmed by the addition of waves of irritating, quick-moving gargoyles and their hellbeast brethren, there's plenty that's been added on the other side to make sure you're able to cope. There's a definite feel of pinging about the place, with Doomguy displaying more agility than one might assume of a large ball of meat carrying a gun. What this leads to is many combat encounters where you actually spend very little time on the ground, instead flinging yourself about the mini arenas with abandon, peppering Satan's frontline workforce with lead, energy blasts, or the odd violent stabbing session, in order to top up your health using the returning glory kill system. Said system, rewarding players for being on the front foot as much as possible, also includes topping up your armour and ammo, and I'm delighted it's returned, as it is the most perfectly Doom thing it could have brought to the series' modern incarnation. Basically, Doom Eternal is big and dumb and silly and not an art game, but it's also big and dumb and silly and utterly exhilarating. The game's big dumb silliness does get away from it a bit when it comes to the lore of Doom Eternal though, with an emphasis on storytelling and unironically making you listen to soliloquy spouting demon priests getting in the way of the better features both new and old. It's a taste thing, and it's probably a tradition thing. The original Doom didn't really have a story, with a lone page tale retconned into being after the game eventually received a commercial release and a manual to go with it. Now we have vast quantities of codex entries, fine, but a wave of grandiose villains and their villainy being villainous at our mute hero does have the tendency to rip and tear you out of the experience in a way that it's hard to justify to all but the most evangelical of the Law Society. It's rarely too long an imposition, but it is an imposition, and that doesn't work well in a Doom-shaped situation. There's also, dare I risk turning what is meant to be a roundly positive review into one full of needling issues, a seemingly huge reliance on bitty little upgrades and extra powers to unlock. It's another aspect that dilutes and leaves you feeling things are a mite less pure than they were before, and while making your new shoulder-mounted cannon's ice grenades more impactful is a thing you'll probably want to do, would any of us really have missed it if there weren't yet another upgrade screen to figure out? I would hazard a guess at no. I don't think I was ever going to be as enamoured with Doom Eternal as I was with the 2016 reboot, given how shocked the world collectively was at how great that last game was. It's impossible to live up to that combo weight of both expectation and relief. What few would have predicted though is that one of the sequel's real areas of innovation, for this series alone of course, would be in smart, skillful use of platforming sections. I still don't think they actually fit. It jars almost every time the aerial navigation comes to the fore, but it's fun to do them, and bar one or two grab the wall glitches, the sections work well. Equally few would have predicted Doom Eternal's slide into the realm of unskippable, endless feeling sections of lore-heavy exposition, and that's an area it does start to feel like not only has it diluted the Doom experience, but it's done so in a distinctly non-positive fashion. So, a mixed bag? Not really, no. Doom Eternal is still brilliant, relentless and genuinely adrenaline pumping, adhering to a purity of moment-to-moment design that will always shine through, regardless of the experiments and trinkets adorning its extremities. I'd just ask, next time, please less blah from people when you have to stand there and listen. A loss of simplistic innocence doesn't stop Doom Eternal from giving you a thoroughly superb time, bar that emphasis on story at least. My highlight. Doom Guy's room in the Fortress of Doom ship hub is a pleasant little bundle of references, collectibles, and jokes. It's genuinely interesting to potter about in there for 5 minutes between the carnage, and when you figure out how to unlock Doom 2 on the old PC, well... Score! 80%! Super shotgun to my head. I'd have to say that's my favourite video about Doom I've ever made. Next up, the penultimate video, another recent one at the time of making this compilation, looking at the world of Doom clones. This was prompted by playing the Amiga for a bit and going, they never did properly do Doom on this, did they? To myself, quietly. Because God forbid you say something like that out loud. The Amiga lot, they are vicious. It's another vid I like, probably some of that recency bias going on, and it let me play a bunch of games I'd never played before for research, as well as giving me an excuse to play Dark Forces again. What a game. But yeah, next vid.
Bransfield.
This is close to a stream of consciousness script, but there we go. Imagine making a game so impactful, so smart, so bar-raisingly impressive, so good, that not only is it copied after you release it, but everyone starts calling all these other games a clone of what you put out. I wager it's a half-decent feeling, to be fair. I could go into the story again for the 10 millionth time, but let's keep it succinct. Doom came out in 1993. No, it wasn't the first game of its type, but it was the best. From there we saw an arms race of developers trying their best to ape its original, with the ensuing flood of what we would call today first-person shooters, universally referred to as Doom clones. A quick aside, no, not everything you see in this video is specifically a Doom clone. I just played a load of 90s FPS games and jammed whatever footage in here. And when I say PC, I mean specifically IBM compatible PCs and their descendants, and not every single different personal computer. There, covered myself for some of you joyful pedants out there. See you at next month's meeting, I'll be doing the keynote. But Doom clones were everywhere, on every format, popping up in every magazine and on the fingerlips of everyone in those dial-up message boards from the past. But why? Well, it was the Souls-like of its day. Doom was popular, revelatory really, and so because of that, everyone was talking about it, and because of that, it was where the money was. On one hand, you might make a Doom clone for PC and be able to carve yourself out a niche within the niche, and ride the coattails of success on the platform. On the other hand, it might be a disservice to call what you made a clone, given it added to the genre and took it off in directions its original could only dream of. While on the rogue third hand, you might be bringing your clone to a format that, like a notable chunk in the early to mid-90s, didn't actually have its own official version of Doom to begin with, thus plugging a gap owners of said format were desperate to have plugged. Given Doom can run on pregnancy tests and be powered by potatoes these days, it can be forgotten that at the time, Doom pushed the PC a fair bit. And given the PC had more to it on a hardware side than the consoles and other home computers of the day, obviously ignoring so many other elements that let the PC down like that god-awful MIDI sound so many people were lumbered with, it meant it was the only format that could actually really handle Doom. Ladled on top of that was the fact the PC as a gaming format was nowhere near the ubiquity it enjoys today. IBM PC compatibles were business machines first and foremost, with the ability to play some games as secondary attraction. Well, unless you bought a mega PC, that is. PCs were also way too expensive for the younger gaming market, unless Daddy the accountant had one in his office, like my mate's dad, with a 1993 mid-range PC coming in at around £1,600 in modern money. Compare that to around £250 in modern money for a then just launched Mega Drive 2, or about £230 modern money for a SNES with Super Mario All-Stars.
And so the majority of players out there didn't actually own the format where Doom was born, where it thrived. They didn't have access to the biggest deal in gaming, and they could only stare on with lust in their eyes at the video game that had changed the world overnight. You can see why it wasn't in the least bit surprising that developers and publishers were suddenly pushing to be the first to get their take on Doom thrust onto any format that didn't already have it. It was a genuine phenomenon, and there was money, modern money and all other forms, to be made. Now, it is fair to note that even back in the 90s, Doom, proper, official, non-clone Doom, ended up coming to plenty of formats beyond the PC. It was incredible on PS1, surprisingly competent, all things considered, on SNES, and a fart fest on 32X, among others. But none of these ports, none of any of the 90s ports, were actually as good as the original. They could be good impressions or competent facsimiles with rough edges, but no machine outside of a beefed up 486 had the real power needed to do the job properly. Nothing had the oomph. So Doom, pure, proper Doom, and not these watered down imitations of the original, still remained out of reach for most players. So where Doom was ubiquitous and simultaneously impossible to possess for so many people, Doom clones acted as padding, a placebo, a snifter of methadone compared to id's pure brown. The clones plugged the gaps until an official port of Doom launched on the platform, and even after an official port came out, the clones could still do some heavy lifting of their own, sometimes to show that more could have been done on the technical side with what it brought to the platform in question, sometimes to just be another good game to play. Just because Doom was the top dog, it didn't necessarily mean the efforts put into bringing it to other platforms would always have the best results. Basically, where Doom might stumble on a specific device, the clones might stroll. There were many reasons for this, but what it boiled down to was a pretty obvious factor. Porting a game from one format to a completely different one is always going to be more challenging than just making a game for an individual format from the beginning. Taking the inspiration from Doom, and the popularity of course, and spinning it into your own unique title that fit the platform in question well, that's just a thing that made sense to do, even if the end results weren't really very Doomy in practice. It was a smart approach, and one that smacked of, dare I say it, integrity in the creative choices being made. Not all Doom clones were cynical cash grabs. But, well, Doom clones were often cash grabs too, riding on those coattails as they were. Some were egregious nonsense, some were nonsense. Some could be half decent, clone is not a slur, but there were a hell of a lot of Doom clones united by the fact they existed purely because someone thought they could make money off of them. This approach resulted in games that looked to id's original more than they looked to the format at hand. So while it wasn't a case of failing to port the existing Doom properly, it was a case of often failing to port the ideas and style of Doom to whatever machine the game was coming to. There was no greater example of this than the Amiga. By the mid-90s, Doom was such an essential part of any platform's claim to being a real gaming machine that even if it couldn't have a true version of its game, it had to have something that could at least act as a proxy. The Amiga was a home computer initially made by Commodore and then, well, that's a whole other video. It was a fantastic few different machines with a wonderful selection of games, but the simple fact was the Amiga couldn't play Doom. It couldn't handle Doom. Doom would not work on the Amiga. And given by this early to mid-90s period the Amiga was still seen as a capable gaming device, sometimes more so than the PC depending on who you asked, it was an almost unbelievable situation to be in that the beloved computer, even the all-powerful Amiga 1200, could not handle Doom. Unbelievable in the minds of those Amiga owners, mainly in Europe at least. Being stood up like this by id, being overlooked in favour of a machine made to confuse you with DOS prompts and play bad platformers America's still wank on about to this day, well, it wound up the Amiga community. There were campaigns, cries, rumours, and more about getting proper Doom on the Amiga. Someone emailed Doom co-creator John Carmack in 1994 pleading with him to give Amiga owners some of the good stuff and publish the response they got online, meaning I can really try hard to rein in my impression of Carmack because it's just a bit mean. Anyway, he wrote in 1994, "The Amiga is not powerful enough to run Doom. It takes the full speed of a 68040 to play the game properly, even if you have a chunky pixel mode in hardware. Having to convert to bit planes would kill it even on the fastest Amiga hardware, not to mention the effect it would have on the majority of the Amiga base." Sorry, John. So not only did the Amiga not get Doom, but it got a slap in the face from one of the guys who made Doom. The whole community was told it wasn't possible. It was not a thing their beloved machine could handle. And it was no surprise what happened next. The Amiga died. Well, that's jumping ahead a couple of steps. It did die eventually, much as there are dozens of us trying to keep the dream alive to this day. But what happened before that demise was a bunch of games came to Amiga trying their hardest to clone the true Doom experience. And they were very much in the vein I mentioned before, of games trying to imitate a style and aesthetic more than they were trying to fit in with the platform they were being made for. With that, the Amiga became fertile ground for Doom clones, and plenty made themselves known over the machine's remaining few years of life. They weren't Doom, though, and the Amiga died without its own proper port of its masterpiece. John Carmack's cackling email ringing through the ears of every owner of the ill-fated, once wonderful home computer. Well, something like that at least. Yes, for God's sake, I know there's a Doom on accelerated Amigas now, and that guy is making Dread the very doomy Doom clone that runs properly on a basic Amiga 500. The Amiga didn't have a proper port of Doom though, and Carmack was proven right in the computer's lifetime. The Amiga died, but the clones continued for a while on all the other formats. But by the time he got to 1996, things shifted significantly, and just a year or two later, you'd be lucky to hear anyone with a nose to the dirt of the gaming world refer to a new FPS as a clone of anything. It had become established, the roots had taken root, and a genre had flourished. It just got to the point where you couldn't realistically call something a clone of what was by that point a bit old-fashioned. Duke Nukem 3D and Quake in 1996, GoldenEye in 1997, Half-Life in 1998. Quake was a Doom clone like the Model T was a horse and cart clone. Half-Life was to Doom what IMAX was to cave paintings. Doom had been outdone, so to clone it wouldn't be the most financially prudent move, and to refer to something as a Doom clone in the games press would make you sound out of touch, like I am right now. And that's basically it. The world moved on because it was profitable to do so. Capitalism!
I don't like making firm declarative statements about the stuff I make, but that really has to be my favourite video about Doom I've ever made. And now, last and least, one of my early days videos, an attempt at comedy. You know what? I'm not going to crap on this. I just rewatched it and found it quite funny, so there. Maybe I'll bring the 10 Things You Didn't Know series out of retirement, though maybe I'll have to rename it for the army of gullible fools on YouTube to 10 lies about this game or something. Or just switch off comments. Anyway, enjoy!
The PlayStation version of Doom was created in 1969 to celebrate Nixon coming up Milhouse. The PlayStation version of Doom's main creator was this man, Tom Romero, a known sync repairman in the Upper Detroit region. Doom on the PlayStation was originally called Sean Connery's favourite race hate scenarios. This was changed. The PlayStation version's password screen was based on the Ubian alphabet. On the PlayStation version of Doom, if you're killed by the Cyberdemon 48 times in a row, you get to be Goro. The BFG's green plasma was, ironically, modelled on observed super solid structures. The PlayStation version's famed lighting effects were created by then CEO of General Motors, John Smith Jr., and ultimately led to the company's downfall. The Spider Mastermind's dance was modelled on Dupe. The only person ever to get more than 95% of secrets on every level of the PlayStation version of Doom was Sebastian Coe, pre-Lord. Due to a programming error, Doom on PlayStation can only be played for 14-minute spells before an actual portal to hell appears. Thanks for watching, and remember, Doom!
I'm definitely not going to crap on it, actually. I do really think that's my favourite video about Doom I've ever made. Plus, I agree with the closing sentiment from that near-decade-old video, the one that came out when Doom was only about 21 years old. Doom! Happy 30th anniversary, original 1993 Doom. I love you like my unborn child. Crap, how the hell do you be a dad? Hopefully my patrons on Patreon can tell me, and so can you if you join them? Masterclass in emotional marketing. Thanks for rewatching. This is my favourite video about Doom I've ever made. Bye!